The one thing that I tell everybody is, and this is in every one of my XSite classes, is this. Specificity counts. You've got to be specific. Their number one rule for marketing is always be more specific, be more specific, be more specific. This is not an exaggeration, I can count on one hand the number of times I have had to tell an appraiser that they have been too specific with something that they put on their website. Just very rarely happens. There's examples all over the place about what this means, but let's talk about, for instance, keywords. A keyword, those that don't know, is what you type into Google when you do a search. You type in appraisals in Oklahoma City. Well, appraisals is a keyword. Oklahoma City is actually a key phrase because it's two words. Although it's one term, it's really two words, and Google can usually parse that out and understand that that's a search term. We call those key phrases. So you've got your keywords and your key phrases, and the more specific you can be when you choose them, the happier you're going to be with the results. To give an example here, what you don't want to do is just have on your website say something like serving the tri-state area. What is the tri-state area? Which tri-state area? Google doesn't actually know what you're talking about when you say tri-state area or serving the Bay Area. Google doesn't have a clue. Which Bay? And do you service this city? What about this suburb of this city? What you've got to be is more specific. Obviously, county is more specific than state. City is more specific than county, right? So the more specific that you can be with the keywords that you choose, the happier you're going to be with results for multiple reasons. Number one, you're going to have few competitors in Google, right? How many people are competing for the term real estate appraisal in Google? It's a huge number of people. Hundreds of thousands of websites are out there competing for real estate appraisal. But there are actually fewer competitors for Odessa, Texas appraisal, right? Because that is a lot more specific. So you're competing with fewer people the more specific you get with your keywords. And on top of that, you get more qualified leads. Say, for instance, that you serve Texas, and which obviously Texas is a ginormous state, land area-wise. So let's say that you say initially that you want to be found by appraisers searching in Texas, or for people searching for appraisers in Texas. Well, you don't maybe serve the entire state of Texas, all the way from El Paso to the east side, right? That's a huge amount of area to cover. And most appraisers in Texas don't have the entire state as their coverage area. Well, if you serve El Paso, Texas, but you don't serve, say, Houston, you may come up for people looking for appraisers in Houston, right? That may actually happen. But the people that come and visit your website and then click back out of your website after realizing that you don't actually serve the entire state, that can actually detract from your ranking in Google for a couple of different ways, and we'll talk about that. But in essence, they are not qualified leads. If somebody visits your website and they're looking for something that you don't provide, we call that an unqualified lead. So you want fewer competitors, and you want the people that actually visit you to be qualified leads and stay on your website. It actually helps your ranking to have a higher percentage of the people that visit you stay on your website. Google tracks that. We're going to talk about that specifically here in just a little bit. Okay, when talking about rank, people ask me all the time, they say, Joel, my rank dropped on my website. Well, what on earth does that mean? Usually what they're talking about is the home page, although that's not always a given. But you're talking about a particular page and a particular set of either keywords or key phrases. So for instance, when you say your home page rank dropped, I would then ask you, well, for what did you search by in Google? What did you type into Google to do that search? Because Dallas TX appraisals might have gone down for you, but DFW appraisals might have gone up. Who knows? So you've got to be specific when you talk about your ranking, and this is very, very important when we start using the tools, is that you can be ranked all over the place for various different keywords, and you choose what they are. And then when you do a search, try and figure out what your rank is and whether it's gone up or down and so forth, or even comparing yourself to your competition, it's always in reference to a particular keyword or a particular key phrase. Some more basics. You've got to know about Google's layout here. Let me pull up my Google page and we'll do a search here. Search for Oklahoma City appraisals and the layout. Obviously, there are, in addition to what are called the local results or local business results up here, we'll talk specifically about these here in a minute. There are the top 10 listings. Mine is here in the top 10. This is vcappraisals.com. Actually come down in ranking for Oklahoma City appraisals. You'll notice if I were to choose OKC appraisals, I'm number 2 in the list. And that is because I get different ranking for different sets of keywords. Remember what we mentioned a minute ago? Each different search gets its own ranking. So you've got your tools on the left, which we're going to delve into, and I'm going to show you some other ones here. This has actually changed recently. You get your first page. Page 2 is actually numbers 11 through 20. Scroll down, and page 3 is 21 through 21 through 30. And the goal really ought to be to get on the first 3 pages for a key phrase or set of keywords that you choose that you want to go for. That would be the goal, to be in the top 3, to be in the top 30 in Google and or Yahoo. Now, sometimes you'll have over here on the side the sponsored links. Sometimes they'll go all the way down. Sometimes there'll be only a handful. Depends on what the page is. But if I go here, let's see if I can. Let's just search for the word appraisals. These up here, the sponsored links, are the same things as these over here on the side. The difference is it actually costs more to run these. These are paid things. We're not going to talk about them. This is Google AdWords. We actually teach a class just about Google AdWords, but that's not what today is. Today is the free stuff. So you have your paid ads up at the top. Sometimes they will be in a frame that is actually got a background that's a slightly different color, depending on how you have your browser set up. And then on the right-hand side, you have more sponsored links. Here in the middle, what we've been talking about for a moment has been the actual organic results. So this is the free stuff over here, including the local business results, which I'll show you how to go in and set up. But these are the paid stuff. I'm not going to show you how to get into that today. Okay, so you get your organic, your local business, pay-per-click, paid ads, and of course the secondary pages. Let's go back here to my PowerPoint. These are the things that make a good rank. A minute ago we talked about being in the top 3 pages. Goal obviously being in the top 10, but seriously, there are only 10 in the top 10. So if you pick some remarkably generic key phrase like Los Angeles appraisals, I mean seriously, what is the likelihood that you're going to get in the top 10 for Los Angeles appraisals? Because you're competing not only for the city of Los Angeles, but probably also the suburbs and maybe even the county, since it's Los Angeles County as well. So that's a lot of competition there for only 10 slots. And of course we talked about having qualified visitors, and the fact that a qualified visitor is somebody who is actually looking for a service you provide, not necessarily that they order from you, but that they are looking for something that you provide. Okay, You need to set up your Google account. If you haven't done so yet, it's completely free, and it helps Google find you. This is what's called your sitemap. It also allows you to use their free, and if you want to, their paid tools as well. Sign out here. Go back to just google.com. Here on google.com, you sign in up at the top. You can create an account if you don't have one. I'm just going to use my XSite login. Created it for my my sitemap and so forth. So I've logged in here to Google. The business solutions are down here, but you can also set up your sitemap. Now, let me pull open I've logged into my XSite here, into my office. If you go to XSite, go to Search Engine Tools underneath it. You can go to Google and Yahoo Sitemaps for instructions specifically on dealing with and setting up your Google sitemap and your Yahoo sitemap. You get the instructions for each of them. It tells you where to go, but you do obviously have to create a free account, which is done right there on Google. I'm going to use that free account a couple of different times here today. So this is one of the first things that I recommend that you set up regardless. Okay, I would, for your keywords, make a list. And the important thing to know here, and this might be something that you write down here, folks, you're going to get it wrong. The first time you try this, everybody gets it wrong. So you're going to try it out, it's not going to work like you think, and you're going to have to go back in and modify it. What I'm going to show you how to do here is do some research to see what actually is working on your website and on your competitors' websites at the same time to see what it is they're doing right or what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right if you do get a page that gets good rank for a particular key phrase or keywords or something like that. I can only give you certain tips. Remember, this is not an exact science. Search engine optimization is an art simply because there are no written rules about the way Google works. If Google would write out exactly what their code does, then there would be no need for this class. We would just do it for you on your XSite. So we don't actually do that here. Obviously, Google doesn't write out what it is that they're looking for. A lot of us just have to know through trial and error and lots of research what does and doesn't work. So when it comes to your own personal website, when it comes to what keywords you want to be found by, you should make a list. You'll probably miss a few things. You'll probably realize that your list isn't specific enough, but I would actually write it out. Write out your keywords, make a list, and then we'll talk about what to do with the list later on, how to expand the list. There's a term called, well, we'll get to that. I'm not going to get into that just yet. Okay, one keyword per page is best. This is something new in the last couple of years for Google is, generally speaking, one word or one phrase is probably going to be the main keyword or key phrase for that particular page. You don't want to just go in and throw in your entire service area onto one page, even if it's the home page. You don't want to put everything on one page. That would be awful. What's even worse is when you do what's called keyword stuffing. This is this third bullet point here. And Michael, this is a warning for you of what not to do. I'll talk about what to do in a minute, but what not to do is to stuff your page with keywords. Do not try and trick Google. What you're trying to do is do something that's not helpful to a site visitor. Google essentially takes the point that they're only going to display pages that are going to be helpful to people, and if what you're doing is entirely for the benefit of raising your ranking, but it doesn't actually help a pair of eyeballs that comes and visits your website, then you're hosed. Google will either destroy your ranking, or even worse, they will blacklist you. I've actually seen many people blacklisted for doing something like listing all of the zip codes that they service on one page. They won't just turn the page off, they'll disable your site. You won't find your site on Google, period. So you got to be careful when you start listing things. My general rule of thumb is about 25 to 30 items per list. The things Google likes are the things that you want to be found by. So if you want to be found by cities, say you have a list of cities that you service, you might put those in a table. You might have a couple of tables on a page, but you certainly don't want a gigantic list where that's all that's on that page. You're going to want text. You're going to want to put things in tables. You're going to want to bullet point things. That's those of you who've taken the jump start. You remember I bullet pointed my service area. Everything that was list-like on my homepage, I bullet pointed. Well, that's an indication to Google that I am doing something for the benefit of a site visitor. Remember, bullet points are preferable to just writing it out in sentence format. Folks, writing things out in sentence format, as far as lists is concerned, is awful. It's awful for site visitors, and it will destroy your Google ranking. If you're going to list things, like we were talking about zip codes just a moment ago, if you're going to list 15 zip codes, do it with bullet points. Do it in a table with carriage returns after each one of them. Something like that. But do not just zip code, comma, zip code, comma, zip code. That's an indication to Google that you're keyword stuffing. I've seen a lot of people just really get into this, and they start listing everything. They're like, well, if I want to be found by this, I got to put it in the page, so I'll just throw everything into the page. You don't want to do that. That's awful for 800 different reasons, not the least of which is you run the risk of hacking Google off and then destroying your listing completely in Google. And it's virtually impossible once you're blacklisted to get unblacklisted. So what I would do is pick one keyword per page. Everybody see this second item here? One keyword per page. Well, let's take, for instance, Michael's problem. We've got the city names and the counties. Well, if you service, say, 8 counties, Michael, I don't know how many you service, but you could create an individual page dedicated to that county. It could be, named after the county. You lead off your page title with the county name, like Caddo County Appraisals. This, of course, being like in the Jumpstart class, says you lead off your page title with the main keywords. And then what you could do is, write a little short paragraph, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and then have a table in the middle of the page where you list the, 20 or 30 cities. And then you'll have, at the end, you'll have multiple pages, each dedicated to that particular county. If you service a very large city, say like Los Angeles or something, where the one city has multiple large suburbs, millions of people or something like that, all the way around, you may actually want to create a page dedicated to that city. So you have Los Angeles appraisals for that one particular page, but in the details of the page, in the actual content, you're going to list your cities, Anaheim and everything. You're just going to make your bullet points or your tables in there, and so Google will then pick up on that in what's in the tables there, and that way you can list all of the individual cities that are part of Los Angeles. Again, or not a part of, but surrounding or whatever. I think you folks understand what I'm going for here. You've just got to be more specific and just focus each individual page on your website. Okay. Tip number 1, your page tags. This will be a review for those of you who have had the Jumpstart class. Page tags are how you define your XSite to Google. In fact, let me go back into my OKC appraisals. There we go. OKC appraisals down here. Now you see what's happened here, folks, is I've got actually 2 listings here. This is going to be really helpful, like what I told about a moment ago when I said have a subpage for the county. Let's say they have, it's Caddo County or whatever. You have a subpage. What you'll usually see, especially if the keywords are in both pages, you'll see first listed is the subpage, and then right under it would be the main page, the actual home page if there are matching keywords and so forth on both pages. But this is the one that will have the higher ranking because it's dedicated to that. This is my good home page, if you follow. And so you've got OKC appraisals. You see OKC is in here and appraisals is in here too. So the keywords are there, but this page gets ranked higher for it, even though it's the sub-page. My tags are these. This right here, the actual thing that people are going to click on to come and visit my website, this is my page title. Most of the time, what's underneath it is going to be the first part of the page description. Everybody with me? Page title up top, it's what they click on, and then page description. Now, when you visit the page, you don't see the description, but you do see the page title up here at the top in Internet Explorer or Google Chrome or whatever your browser is at the moment. You can actually see the page title here at the top of Internet Explorer. But you don't really ever see the description. Now, where you go to fix this and change it is editing your website. So let me start the wizard. If we remember from the Jumpstart class, let me go ahead and edit this good home page. Every page, remember, gets its own content, and every page gets its own page title. Remember? Google, every page, this is different from the home page title. Every page gets its own page title, and every page gets its own page description. And you'll notice I get fantastic ranking with absolutely nothing in the keywords box. This is fully intentional, folks. This right here is completely overlooked by Google. Anything you put in here, Google does not look at all. It doesn't compare anything. It just completely ignores it. It doesn't compare keywords to your page title or your page description. Google figures, well, if it's important enough to you, you're going to put it somewhere else, preferably on the page itself, right? So the page title, a couple of points, lead off with the main keywords for that page. So if you've got OKC appraisals here, Google's going to think OKC appraisals and maybe Oklahoma City along with it. I'm not sure which. Yes or no on that. Google tends to change the way they do things a little bit every now and then. But at least the first 2 or 3 words, sometimes the first 3 or 4 words, will be the main keywords for this particular page. So let's say you have a page about, fast turnaround time. So maybe fast appraisals in OKC. The reason I would put something like this is this might be something somebody actually types into Google. Remember, a keyword or key phrase is what somebody is going to search by. So never put anything, never lead off your page title with something nobody's going to search by. Nobody's going to go in and search by your phone number, right? Don't lead off with your phone number. If somebody's going to find you by your name, they're going to find you anyway, right? Either have your website or they're going to search for your company name or something, and they'll find you. I see a lot of times people will put in something like, for the home page, for the page title, they'll put home, BC appraisals. This doesn't do anything except for the word appraisals, which obviously is part of my company name. But how many people are competing for the word appraisals? That's not specific enough to get me any ranking of any significance at all. So this doesn't help me out. So always lead off your page title with something that's appropriate and helpful. This is one of the most important things you could ever do for your website in regards to search engine optimization is get your page title right. And like I said, you'll probably screw it up first. That's okay. You can come back in and you can change it. Google likes when you go in and you change things on your website. You don't have to change every page. Google likes you to have some static pages, meaning unchanged, but it's not necessary. Page description, you can put more information in here than this. But again, I should be more specific, and this is something that I cover in my Jumpstart class. But let's say that I want to be found by Edmund appraisals. Well, what I could do here is Edmund appraisals. And then more appraisals. Everybody see the difference? This is what I want to be found by. So by actually putting that in the text itself, putting it in the page description itself, and putting it in the page title itself, and actually writing it out like this, helps Google understand this is what I want to be found by. Actually writing it out is really, really important. Another notion here is the submission to search engines. You should only check this box once for one page, one time on your website. Once Google finds you, they will come back. There's no need to ping them over and over again. They will come back. If you've had an XSite for a while and you haven't done anything with it and there haven't been any changes, it may be several weeks before Google comes back to notice your changes, meaning that you can't just make a change to your website and go to Google and look at it. Now, those of you who have blogs, on the other hand, those of you who run your blogs on your website, we're going to talk about blogs here in just a moment, that's a completely different story. You can actually usually see by the next day that Google has a different listing for you. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. So for those of you taking notes, oh, by the way, at the end of class, folks, I am going to email you a copy of this PowerPoint. So you don't need to write everything down that's on the PowerPoint slides here. I'll email all attendees with these notes at the end of class. Now, use the same keyword in your description, your title, and your content. Okay. So if you want to be found by OKC appraisals, then you put it in all three places. Again, they are here in the content. Oklahoma City appraisals should be in here somewhere. It's not. You put it in the page title and you put it in the page description. Now, I'm going to actually expand on this just a little bit. And, well, let me scroll back down and finish with the page titles. You see how this is done here with the dashes in between my key phrases? Not in between each word, but only in between the phrases. This is a standard convention for page titles. In Google, it's actually easier to read with the dashes. You see a lot of people have the dashes. Every now and then you'll find some people that don't do dashes, they'll do commas. From a reading standpoint, that's not necessarily the best thing to do, although it won't kill you to do that. Dashes is where I would actually separate them. And keep in mind, you do this, oops, don't do something like this. Everybody see the difference here? The difference here are the spaces surrounding that dash. If I were to not have any spaces, Google actually sees appraisals-Oklahoma as a single word more often than not. Sometimes they'll parse it out, a lot of times not. So you're going to want to put your spaces, space-space, between each of the phrases. Your page description, you can use commas and a space. Comma, space, comma, space, comma, space. Again, just a convention, but it's helpful to Google. Remember, nobody's going to really read this except sometimes in Google itself. Use commas in your page description. The URL for a page can include a keyword or two. All right, so let's talk about this. The URL, for those that don't know what that is, when you visit a website, that's this up here. Let me do... This is the URL, vcappraisals.com/goodhome. You can actually set this. This is part of the XSite here. This is the fourth place Google will look for keywords. And it's at the top. This is the button name that people are going to click on in your website. But vcappraisals.com/what? Well, what do I want to be found by? OKC appraisals. But you'll notice I'm going to put a dash in here. I don't need to put, actually you can't put spaces. So in your URL up here you can do OKC appraisals. Or if I do FHA appraisals, remember, OKC FHA appraisals. I'm separating each of my words with a dash. You could also, if you want to, do an underscore instead of a dash. But this again will make will make Google note that these might be actual keywords for this particular page. Remember, each page gets its own content, its own page title, its own page description, and of course it has its own static URL. Of course, you can change it if you want to. Google will just see this as a new page. When I change this, I get a new page in Google. When you do new pages in Google, if you haven't set up your sitemap, then it may take a little while for Google to find them. Oh, and Mark, about the description, making lists. Absolutely. You can do lists here in your page description. Remember, this isn't actually on the page. Nobody actually sees this, except sometimes in a Google search, and then not all the time. When I was talking about not doing lists, it was up here in the page content itself. Okay. A little bit more detail than you got, obviously, in the Jumpstart class. Tip number 2, write a blog. Okay, some of you are thinking and groaning to yourself, oh gosh, I can't do this. Folks, writing a blog is remarkably simple. In fact, to boot with all of this, grammar and spelling are of secondary importance. People just don't really care if you can't spell or you use, bad subject-verb agreement or something like that. People tend to not care. I'm one of those pain in the rears where I do care, but that's just me. I'm a former high school teacher, and I love the red pen, and I'm a grammar freak. But most people are not at all finicky. In fact, one of the benefits of having blogs that are more informal is that it actually seems more personable. So there's more of a personal connection between the reader and the writer when a blog is a little bit more informal. You should talk about things that are specific to your business. You should talk about things that are local. If 4 out of 5 posts are about real estate or appraising, that's great. Maybe 1 out of 5 then could be something like, you've got a new restaurant that opened in town that you just went to and you think it's great. Something personable. Obviously, don't write a blog about your kids unless it's real estate related for some reason or whatever. But you do want to write about things that are happening in your area, new construction, something you've seen that a builder has done recently, something about a particular neighborhood. You folks have opinions. You're paid for your own opinions. Most of you like to just write anyway, and most of you like to have your opinions heard. Just 8 sentences, 2 paragraphs, 4 sentences each, once a week. You can write 8 sentences. I am confident everybody I know as an appraiser can write 8 sentences a week. That's what a blog is. It doesn't need to be of earth-shattering importance, and it doesn't need to be polished. But, and this is critical, folks, this last point right here, you should commit to doing it. You should commit to doing it at least once a week. If you don't, you're going to end up with somebody going to your blog and seeing that you haven't updated it since last September, and they're going to realize that you are disconnected from your website, and they are going to be less likely to engage with your website at all. So this is one of those things, it's binary. You're either going to do it and commit to it, or you're not going to do it at all, and you completely turn it off. I cannot be more clear about that. The blog is fantastic for multiple reasons I'm going to get into in just a minute, but either do it or don't do it. Okay? So let me show you where this is. Actually, close that page out. When you're in your wizard, you can click on the blog button at the top. To turn the blog on, you go to settings, right? You make sure you get your blog title and call it whatever you want to. You can turn things on or not over here on the side. To make a blog post, you fill out a subject line, and then you write your stuff. You can even copy and paste. There's even a paste from Word option for those of you that would write it in Word. So you just give it a quick little subject line and put your text in. If you want to throw a photo in there as well, you may do so. Obviously, it's been a little while since I've done it on this particular website. Let me go to a website here. Let me log into a different training website that I use. I actually have a website called iwantorders.com. Oops. See if this gets me in. Okay, I'm going to go to my XSite. I'll go to blog. I go to previous posts, and if I go back to, say, March, I have a post here about readability. I'm going to click on edit so you guys can actually see what this looks like when you're making a post. Now, I've written a lot more for my posts than most of you probably will, but I've talked about readability and so forth, and I can change this, update this any way that I want to. But when I'm done, I scroll down and I can either save it so I can finish it later, or I can go ahead and submit, which will obviously post it to my website. Now, the good thing about this is if I go to my website and I go to my blog, I've got a little graphic linked to my blog, which is nice. Here's the post itself, readability, when it was posted, and all the way down, including, of course, the photos that I put in, came right along with it. Google will actually see this, right? The blog, Google will actually see this, and if I click on the individual icon on the side, Google will see each of these posts as their own page, being specific as part of the URL, part of the actual site for that. Google will then actually look at the text itself and look for things that it wants to list you by. So having things that are about your service area where you talk about, subdivisions, cities, counties, anything like that where you actually throw words in here, they become keywords, although not quite as big as the main keywords for the page. They still are keywords for that page, which raises the ranking overall for that particular page for those keywords. It gives you yet another page and even sets of pages where you actually have those keywords on the page, and Google will see them as such. I go back in here. Also, people can subscribe to your blog if you want them to. You set up a template. This is part of XSellerate. XSellerate's the marketing utility that's up in here. And when you make a post, let's say I do a new post or whatever out here, sometimes, and you can set this up under settings where it will actually, you make a post and so forth, it actually sends a notification essentially that I've got a new blog post to whomever you want. You set that up under subscribers. It's a contact list in XSellerate, and XSellerate will handle the details of that for you. So that all you do is you create your new blog post, you click Submit Post, it puts it on your website on your blog page. Google will come visit it and update you, and automatically people that have either signed up or that you have manually signed up, say your current lenders, the people you currently do business with, they will also get an email from you that you've updated your blog. So it's a little bit about marketing, but it's built into this. Talk about that in a little bit more detail tomorrow. I'll show the details of that. It gives people the all-important reason to visit your site for a follow-up. People are generally not going to order from you on the first visit. It's the second visit that really counts. Okay. So blogs are very important to Google. In fact, they are so important. I go to my stats here. This was the case several months ago. I'm willing to bet it is again. If I go to my page views, oh, look at this. My blog has been viewed more times than my homepage. Everybody see that? My blog is the most important page on my website because it has been viewed that many times. Pretty slick, huh?